Hey there. Welcome to the guest speaker series for the Intentional Optimists, Unconventional Leaders podcast. I'm Andrea Johnson. I'm excited to be here today for the celebration of our 100th podcast episode. Woo! With a mentor and coach of mine, Allegra Stein. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am honored to be just a part of this milestone for you. It's just so exciting. I'm really, really thrilled for what you've created for yourself. It's just very inspiring to watch.
Well, thank you. I want to be inspiring for other people. What I want to do is for other women, especially to see that they don't have to do what they think they have to do, that
Yep.
they can do what is unique to them and beautiful to them.
Mhm.
That's my whole message. And one of the things, so we're going to get into a little bit about our story, you and me,
Sure.
because we didn't really do that on the podcast. And for those of you watching or listening, if you didn't check out episode 100, it came out on Monday. It's called, I think, Let's find out.
Go find out.
Let's go find out. And as we looked at, because I thought, oh, it needs to be like the Coach in the Hoodie, or it needs to be some kind of special thing. And my producer, Kim, was just like, there you go. Unconventional, y'all.
I know.
She said, no, I think one of the things that really resonated as we listened to the way you told your story was it was this constant curiosity and we know that a little bit to be your ideator, right? To be able to like figure, ideas. But it's not just a figuring it out on your own. You're not sitting around in a room just by yourself.
Right.
You have this ability. That's why we want you on here as a leader. You have this ability to help lead others into that. Let's go find out.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I found you because early on in my podcasting, somebody recommended Kristen Sherry as a guest.
Yes.
And I don't know if you remember all of this story, but somebody recommended her. And I want to say she was like my fourth or fifth interview. And I didn't really know who she was. and I started
go find out. Let's go find out.
Let's go find out. And so I started looking and I'm like, dang, this woman is quite the author. And she has her own coaching certification and everything, but I couldn't find her on a lot of podcasts, but I found her on your podcast. You had interviewed her because you had been certified as a UMAP coach. And I thought, I like both these ladies. Let me find out about this Allegra Stein chick, right? And you were offering at the very beginning of your Misfit to Maverick community.
Yeah.
If you get in now, you can buy for a lifetime. And I don't know what, there was just... and you know what I'm talking about, Allegra, but for those of you listening, if you've ever felt, or if you've been in music when you've had like a tuning fork, it goes ding, and you can kind of feel it through your whole body. It's like that. That's when people talk about something resonating.
Yeah.
And there was just something about your message, especially right at the time, the name of the program, Misfit to Maverick. I'm like, oh, that's me. I'm the black sheep. I am the flamingo in the flock of pigeons. I need somebody who tells me it's okay.
That's awesome.
To not be the plain Jane vanilla, fit into the corporate whatever. And I don't know what it was. And I just pulled the trigger. I'd never met you.
I know. Well, I remember seeing you come through. I'm like, who is this Andrea Johnson person? This is amazing.
This person plunked down some cash. And I was like, you know what? I need to do this. And so that kind of started an over 2-year relationship.
Yeah.
And your specialty is new coaches, right? I mean, it just kind of is. And so for me, that was just so perfect at the time. I'm going to stop talking because I want you to, but that's the story of kind of how we met.
Yep. And you know what I love too, and it's a testament to your values and interests and personality that you were willing to take a leap.
Sure.
What are your top 5 strengths again?
Relator. I reordered them. I worked with Hoda and reordered them.
Nice.
So relator is top, then connectedness, strategic, activator, and maximizer.
Yeah, it's likely the activator, because I'm relator, activator, maximizer too, which is where we likely have a lot of synthesis.
Yeah.
And it's that I think those the activator and maximizer, I think very much lend themselves to that energy of let's just go find out.
I gotta know.
There's something new that I need to explore. That's the maximizer. And so I just that's a testament to you being willing to kind of give something a shot that just felt right, but you weren't quite sure why. And I just am so grateful that you did.
Thank you. And just so for anybody listening who doesn't know what a relator, an activator, or maximizer is, I'm going to put up here the UMAP is Kristen Sherry's product
Mhm.
that pulls together the Clifton strengths, that pulls your values and your skills, right?
And interests.
Skills and interests.
Yep.
So just give us a
Core
brief so that they kind of understand what that is, because I don't want to leave anybody completely in the ether.
Well, most people are many people watching have probably taken assessments, like even if it was from when we were kids going through magazines and like the little tests where you pick the letters and your answers give you, bring some threads together. And then they say, if you picked mostly A's or mostly, if you picked mostly B's, like it kind
Right.
of is supposed to tell you something about yourself. So I think most people are familiar with these kinds of assessments, but especially in the corporate space and professionally, like they've become, and even just around self-awareness, assessments are these really cool tools that through a series of questions and exercises on the end will kind of reflect something back to us about ourselves that maybe we didn't see, or which the assessments are usually good ones, are usually very intuitive. They're not surprising. It's very just like, oh my gosh, yes, that's me.
Yeah.
So UMAP is one of those assessments, but what sets it apart is it's actually 4 assessments in one. Because Kristen, who designed it, had been in the corporate space, in HR, in career pathing for a while. And she had realized that, employees and managers were taking like this assessment over here and that one over here. And she just realized that it wasn't just one thing that defined career happiness and work fit. It was actually a much more holistic way of looking at who we are. And so she said, I'm going to create a tool that actually assesses 4 things: strengths, values, skills, and interests. And so she designed it. She's been running UMAP and she certifies UMAP coaches. I'm a certified UMAP coach. I've been certified since 2019. And that's really, it really shifted the direction of my own coaching practice to working with women around career pathing, what their next steps were going to be. Really playing in that space of career coaching and mentorship and just brainstorming. And then it was later that year, end of 2019, beginning of 2020, that I had the insight. I think every coach should know this about themselves.
Hmm.
And so I really kind of took that tool and have, a lot of different UMAP coaches use UMAPs with different communities. There's UMAPs for teens and for execs and for managers and for,
Yeah.
and I love using it in all different kinds of cases. I'm just a big geek and I just think it's so fun. But
That's another way that we resonate is that we're both.
I've been using it now with coaches now for 2 years. And what I found in bringing UMAP to coaches is that what tended to rise towards the top of the conversations was the strengths and values pieces.
Yeah.
Not that the skills and interests aren't really important, but especially if a coach is like a solopreneur and running their own coaching practice, I tend to really gravitate towards strengths and values. And so I've created programming that's just strengths and values specific. Or, in some cases, I'm like, let's just talk about strengths. I'm
Hmm.
just a strengths class in September
Yeah.
because I think every coach at the very least should know their strengths.
Yeah.
But it's just, I also am holding, it's just one piece of many parts of what define just like ideal work and life for all of us.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, we as coaches are kind of watching you walk an unconventional path, right? Not
Yeah.
only are you not walking a traditional coaching path, which I don't know how we can say there's a traditional coaching path,
Right.
because there are so many different ways to do coaching, so many different types of coaching, so many different types of assessments and certifications,
So
because we
many
both
things.
have very different certifications. But those of us in your community, are kind of watching you kind of walk this path in a very different way. Um,
Sure.
and one of the things, like I said, drew me to you was that you gave me permission to just kind of be myself. So I'd love for us to get into a little bit, because we've given a lot of background, which is good, but a little bit of how you work with people, coaches or not, to help them let go of this is the traditional way that I'm supposed to do things, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I like playing with this in the field of coaching is because just my worldview about the coaching industry is that you can be wildly creative. I see
Wildly.
the word coaching to me is like cooking. Like
Right.
they live on the same plane. Someone's like, "Ooh, what do you do for what you're, what is coaching?" is like asking what is cooking.
Yeah.
Well, there are infinite ways that cooking can take shape for a person, just as I believe that there are infinite ways that coaching can look. I have artistic social as a personality type, so I love and I creativity is one of my top values. Like these are all the things that I really came to be aware of and accept and really now intentionally try to apply in my work is what I learned from my UMAP.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm worried I strayed from your original question.
No, but what I wanna get to there is that you said, and I watched you go somewhere else, and I'm like, "No, where did you
I
go?"
know, I was
We
like, "Wait a minute,
literally think alike.
I've
I think
just,
I
like, wandered down this idea path because 'cause I'm an ideator, so
right.
you can see me, like, my wheels spinning, and all of a sudden I'm like, "Wait a minute, I think I was supposed to be on that path down there." So now I'm back, Andrea.
Sorry, y'all. It's like having 2 squirrels in a room.
I love it.
Um So, no, the question was, how do we actually help people? But I think what I would like to get at is you gave yourself permission and you
Yes,
accepted yourself. And
right.
I think that's the piece that's what I wanted to latch onto is that you finally understood and accepted because I know that for myself, there are things I understood, but I didn't accept them for a really long time.
Yeah.
And even because I'm a DISC certified coach, right? So
Oh, great.
a consultant. So I can know about myself that I'm an I, C, and a D, but for the longest time, I felt like my I and my C were in conflict. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, no, no. And one of the best coaching pieces I got was from just like I did a free thing with a Enneagram coach. But what she said was, I think a good word for you is just going to be allow.
Mhm.
And it was just allowing myself to be who I am. And I think
Nice.
that's almost a kernel of what you teach is and how you help people is that you just have to allow yourself to be who you are and not worry about being something else.
Well, and I think what I was getting to where I went off a little bit is that when you do that, things become a lot more easy and fun.
Yes.
That's the that's the catch is that how all of you who are watching or, operate, all of these things that make all these ingredients that make you who you are, your cooking becomes a lot better when you use the ingredients that you've got.
Yeah.
And I think what you're speaking to, Andrea, and I call it like the 3 A's. There's awareness. So
Mm.
awareness is taking an assessment, whether it's UMAP or strengths or DISC, you have awareness. There's acceptance, which is that piece that can take a while. And that happens often when I work with someone. They're like, "Oh, I wish I had different strengths," or "I don't see how this is a good fit for what I thought I was supposed to be doing." And so there's this period of acceptance because
Yeah.
once you accept it and allow it, you can apply it. And I think you're a testament to that because just looking at how much you create, how much of yourself you're bringing into the world, your authenticity, I think, and it seems to be really fun for you. You seem to just be having a lot of fun being yourself, but notice that because it's fun and perhaps easy, and that doesn't mean that there's no hard work or that it's not edgy or that you're not coming up against, stories, this and that.
I'm out on the edge going,
Right? You're like, "What am I doing?" But that's different than allowing it to be easy, and that was kind of what you were circling, what I was getting to is when you work with someone, whatever field they're in, and I think my point around coaching is it because it's creative, you can find ways to,
oh, yeah.
get yourself in there. Um, but I think no matter what anyone does, learning these things about themselves, and you know what, too? There's a fourth A. There's a fourth A.
Okay.
Awareness, acceptance, application, and advocacy. Like, especially if you work for someone else, advocating for your gifts, being an advocate for your gifts in your workplace.
We're going to just fix the banner. There we go.
Okay, great.
4 steps.
Right.
And what's interesting is that I have talked to somebody about this advocacy thing recently. One of my coaching clients, it's just real easy, especially for women in administrative type positions, to
Yeah.
not stand up for ourselves. Say,
Yep.
well, this is what I gotta do. Nope, you don't. And the other thing I wanted to share is today I posted a James Clear quote that says, "The ideal form of work feels like play.
That's right.
Still accomplishes something useful and valuable. It's joyful for you and helpful for others." And, you know, I like things to be fun. I like to be joyful, to be happy. It's like everybody knows I got pineapples out there, I got flamingos, and I'm going to say yay to whatever. Right. And so, yes, I'm having fun, but it is not 100% there yet. I am still in that whole acceptance. It's the awareness. The more awareness we get, the more acceptance we need and the more allowance. But then when you start applying them, you realize, why was I fighting that? You
Yes.
know? And I'm discovering a few of those things right now, like in this week or in the last 2 weeks. It's like, why was I fighting that? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that. That's what I'm gonna do. So it really helps.
Well, and sometimes it's because we're part of systems that have a narrative about what people are supposed to do.
Yes.
And
We're
and
big systems, medium systems,
that
small
all
systems.
kinds of
5,
systems.
10, 12
Yes.
systems,
And
job
so
systems, family systems, religious systems, culture systems, all of it.
that's right. And so the system that I've been trying to disrupt a little bit is, I call it the coaching industrial complex,
Yeah.
which isn't a person or a thing. It's more this idea that coaching looks one way and you have to do it this way. And if it's not done this way, you're not doing it right. And if you're not, there's a big like money elements, urgency. Just the narrative around the coaching industry can be very I don't know what the word is. Sometimes I call it's like a black hole. It kind of sucks people in. And then what happens is there's like a constraint. Like
Mm,
I always go like this. It's like, okay, there's this right way. I have to do it this right way.
yeah.
There's a right way to do it. There's a proven system. And I like to come in and a phrase I use all the time is like, there is no one right way,
Yeah.
but there's a right way for you.
Yeah.
And that begins with understanding who are you and how is it you like to work?
Yeah.
It
And I
sounds
think
like a
that's
reverse
valid.
engineering.
That's valid anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, of course. It's valid everywhere. And the a big piece of it too is then starting to believe that we can lean on those parts of who we are and that things will work out.
Yeah. And
That's tough too.
and what I would submit is, we're gonna get a little philosophical here, is that
Do it.
it may not even be the coaching industrial complex as much as it is our need to be systematized. And so we
Oh,
find one. And there's, like you said, there's not just one way, there's 50 out there
yeah.
that are
Yeah.
great. And everybody's got a different kind, right? I think you have two different ones, and certifications yourself. And if I'm correct, but there's plenty out there. There are really amazing coaches with no coaching certification. But I said this to a client 2 weeks ago in looking at looking at her disc debrief, and she was saying, "Oh, well, I really should be. I need to confront better." I'm like, "No, you need to be you." And
Yeah.
you need to handle it. So if you're a high I who doesn't like confrontation, what you do have is the relatability skills. So you need to just get curious and find out how you can relate to them. Oh, yeah, you don't have to be able to have conflict. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to have conflict. You just need to know how you need to handle conflict. So I
Mhm.
think that whole point of yours is that there's one way for you to do it. That's the way that we all should be looking at like everything we do.
Yeah.
If you're in a factory where the widget has to be produced within the 6 sigma decimal point of exactness, I get it.
Yeah.
But most of us are not, many of us are not in that kind of a system. So being able to say to people, who you are and the strengths that you have is enough to do it your way is great.
Mhm.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So how do you foster that more?
Conversations like this,
Yeah.
creating, being I've always the stuff that I create and put out there, I've always just lived by, if it helps like if one person watches this, if
Yeah.
one person sees this, and I know more will, but
Yeah.
if one person is helped by this conversation, then that is that can have impact beyond measure, because who knows what that one person will go and do. And so
Right.
I try and not try and like scale the impact beyond just what I can do in any one moment. And it's trying to find touch points. And it's, again, I'm a high relator, so I like
Yeah.
helping individuals one at a time and creating containers where people can ask me questions or get help, or, and just trust that the message will continue to kind of percolate out the more I'm willing to talk about it, and not discounting the power of like compounding conversations, and this, bro, wow, I just heard this thing, and gosh, what would it be like if I could find a job or something where I could actually be me? I mean, that's kind of the question. It's like,
Yes.
what if there was a career or a job or a path or a
Yeah.
direction where you could actually be yourself and be successful?
Yeah.
And that sometimes for many of us and many people, that requires untangling and unlearning a lot of narratives that we never realized. I mean, a big one, and this may resonate, like a big one is that like it's all about hard work. And so
Protestant work ethic.
that translates into it. If it's not difficult, then it mustn't be right. Like, because if it's not challenging, then I'm not working hard enough. Like, challenge is a sign of something. So when you work within your strengths, when you honor your values, when you are aligned with the skills that energize you, and you're allowed to express your personality, things are really easy. And there can be a dissonance there. Like, well, if it's easy, then it's not good.
Right.
So that's a very fast, and yet it's counterintuitive, because guess what? If it's easy, you're more productive, and you're more efficient, and you're more excited, and you're more happy, and you're more willing to like show up and be present for whatever project or work you're a part of. And yet I'll never forget a client saying to me like, well, but if it's easy, then it's not the right thing. So anyway, that's just like a little example of the kinds of things that can surface when you start to lean into the possibility of aligning your work and your path to what it is you're best at.
And I think it's very real for many of us. And that is, I shouted it out there. It's the Protestant work ethic. And we hear that a lot. Whether or not we come from that a Protestant background, that is inherent in the American dream.
Yeah.
That's just part of the American dream, is that you work hard and you do well, right? It's like you work hard, you get your paycheck, and you retire. And, at some point, when you hit a certain age and when you start learning enough stuff, you think, why does this have to be so hard all the time? And that's when things can start changing. Another conversation I had this week was, so what is it you really want to do? Well, I don't really know what I want to do. Just what if we could? Well, I want to help people, but I kind of want to help people on my terms. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, well, isn't that selfish? And I'm like, that's what I do every day. That's what I do every single day. I help people on my terms. I'm self-employed. Now, you could still do that as a CEO or a COO or whatever, because you're then the top person, and this person's very leadership oriented. And I said, so, and then immediately it's like, well, that's not attainable. Why? Because I don't have this degree. Well, let's just unravel that, right? You said there's a lot to unravel. And so many of us have, in DISC, like this is something you may or may not know a lot of, but 70% of people measure out at an S, which is the steady. Okay. Of all the people, 70% measure out at an S. So these are your backbone of your teams. This is the reason why change can be hard, because they don't like change. They are the ones who are willing to get in there and work hard and work hard and work hard and work hard. They're also the ones who follow the rules, right? If you have rules that are set out in society, this is how we're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
They're the ones who do that. They're not the disruptors. And so for them, it's very difficult to do anything outside of that norm. And so as we talk, that's one of the reasons I love knowing. That's why I geek out on all the different things,
Yeah.
because I like being able to see someone's strengths, and I like to know what their disc type is. And I even like to know their Myers-Briggs sometimes, because I want to know how they need to receive information, because I want to be the best communicator I possibly can while helping them figure out who they need to be so that they can do exactly what you and I are talking about.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Can we switch gears just a little bit? Because I'm
Sure.
sitting here thinking, we're both parents, right? You've got school starts next week for you guys?
2 more weeks.
2 more. Oh, that's late.
Yep.
Wow.
Just after
Um,
Labor Day. It's always been that way here in New York.
oh, okay. Well, we're in Virginia, Central Virginia, and some of them
I
started 2
know.
weeks ago, and we started last week. My friend in Hawaii started 3, 4 weeks ago. Um, but here's a piece, because as women, we have multiple roles, right? Some of us are business owners, some of us are managers, or some of us are employees, many of us are parents. um, Many of us, some people are maybe not the parent but are the caregiver. As we take this idea of you don't have to follow all the systematized rules, how do you translate that into parenting conversations or conversations in a team?
Well, where it's surfaced for me and my kids anyway is here's the thing, a simplified explanation for strengths, let's say.
Okay.
A strengths assessment will show you how you like to get something done. It's about how you do it. And the phrase that frequently surfaces for me is like, all roads lead to Rome. So what it's done is it's opened up for me that we can reach a same goal, but in different ways, and let's pick the way, which can be difficult if you don't understand strengths and like recognize that other people do things differently. Like there's acceptance of others' ways too,
Right.
right? And so with my kids, it's just been very helpful for me to recognize that they are going to reach whatever it is that they want to reach in different ways,
Mm,
different from one another and possibly different than myself and
mm,
their father. And that's just, I think, very important, of like honoring the individual and recognizing that my kids, I want to give them space to express themselves in the way that they do things best, and to, as much as possible, not internalize that story that there's one right way.
mhm.
That's really the thing, is that actually there's a right way for you,
Yeah.
and it's okay. There might be discomfort in that, especially if there's like, no, 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 it's got to be done like this. Like, well, what if I could do it in the way that comes most easily to me? Um, and so that just informs how I hold space for them and talk to them about their lives and what it is that they want to get done, and observe their habits and their patterns. I mean, it's not, I think parenting is such a complex, multi-layered experience that it's not 100%,
At least.
fail safe that I can just hold this position all the time.
Yeah.
But it is nice just knowing that we all approach life so differently, and that it doesn't help them to try and like make them me.
Parents never do that. What are you talking about? Um, because what I think I hear you saying is that when you start understanding your own strengths, and when you start
Yeah.
understanding the way you can get there differently, it allows you to shift your perspective on how other people get there.
Yeah.
And so many times, I find that for myself and for my husband, as we look at our son is adopted. So there's not even like a genetic disposition in certain directions. We are finding a really interesting genetic, almost parallelism with my husband's nephew, which is really interesting, but because they just must be very similar in personality. But there are
Mm.
times I have to it's almost like just take the lens and turn it, babe. You got to
Yeah.
see it from a different perspective. So what I'm getting at is this work that you do that helps you understand that you don't have to follow the conventional path and you don't have to stay within all of the systems, is a potentially um, disruptor of those kinds of cycles as they move through our generations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's super powerful. That's an amazing insight.
I mean, because you doing that with your kids helps them see I can do that with my friends. helps them see, and it may be that it's not a friend that they need to be with all the time, or but it also it opens their minds to be able to see things just from different perspectives, because we all
Yeah.
have our own perspective. We just do.
Yeah.
It's our experiences, it's our genetic disposition, it's our nurturing, it's whatever our environment is like.
Yep.
And as parents, we do want to teach our children certain things. We have specific morals or values or things that we want to instill in them, but to be able to accept ourselves allows us then. But I was just curious to know if there was anything that you thought you would do, that how you do differently as a parent. Do you find that this has changed the way you parent, seeing things this way? Or is that just normally you?
I don't know. It's so hard for me to know how it
You're
would
just
have
so
gone.
darn curious anyway.
Yeah, I'm high adaptability, so
Yeah.
I'm very I'm very present focused, I don't know how I would have done things differently, I just know that there's a strengths for kids. You could go to Gallup, there's a kids
Yeah.
strength. I think there's a strengths for teens, and I've had them take it, and I'm more interested in they were interested in seeing their results, and it was very validating for them, but it's neat having that tool and having that language just to be able to, you know, talk about what they do naturally,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
highlight just what comes easiest for them. That's another thing too, is I just notice what I try and notice what my kids do without without having to think about it or be prompted to do it.
Because it's
And
just that comfortable for you
it just
now.
they don't even, yeah, it just doesn't even, it just comes so natural. I think that's the word and the phrase is like what comes naturally to your kids,
Mm,
and use that as a cue.
mm,
And because I think that's sometimes where conflict can happen, is because what comes naturally to them is different than what we think they should be doing or should be interested in or should
mhm.
be spending their time, and I know there's nuance to all of this, but my son, for example, he just likes, sometimes he'll just pull paper out and just start drawing. He'll just draw and draw and
Yeah.
draw, or he'll lay in his bed and just like do his Rubik's cube and just talk about it. And I just like noticing, like, he doesn't need any help to do that. It just kind of
Mhm.
flows through him, and to celebrate that and allow
Yeah.
that to be a clue of
Yeah.
what to nurture and continue giving space for moving forward.
Yeah.
Um, so that definitely is something that percolates up for sure.
Well, I think this is really powerful. It's, as a coach, this is really powerful work to do in the coaching community, especially for those of us as we again break that cycle and go out and coach others, because
Yeah.
then we know, the awareness, the acceptance, the application, and the advocacy, being able to pull all those things together. But, for me here to be able to say, as unconventional leaders, the definition of unconventional is not staying inside those systems. The definition of unconventional is not necessarily worrying about what society says I'm supposed to be, do, act, or say.
Yeah.
It's being me within a certain, some people need a little bit more container to do that, and some people are totally free. And I think that being able to do that will help us all as we move forward, especially those that we work with, and as parents with our children, just being able to be willing to see that leadership is every shape, color, form,
Yeah.
whatever, and it has some specific aspects to it. There's a vision that leaders have. There's the ability to have some kind of character to be able to say, I do what I say what I do. But it's those are the things that encompass being an unconventional leader, and that's what I want to highlight here.
Yeah. I think too, if I can just share a little metaphor that's surfacing as we wrap
Okay.
up, like it's kind of like and Alex Baisley of the Big Dream program, he taught us this in one of his classes. He's just amazing. But he and I forget the specific story, but if you think about a plant, a seedling, and soil, and the seedling is you, and the soil is the system, like whatever
Mhm.
system structure you're a part of. When we plant the seedling in the soil, some seedlings thrive.
Right.
So some seedlings don't thrive in that soil. They just need a different kind of soil to bloom in.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too, that is just recognizing that if you're not thriving in the current circumstances you're in, it doesn't mean necessarily that it definitely doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It also doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the soil.
Right.
It's simply that they're not a fit. And
Right.
that's the piece that I really love to play with
Yeah.
is to be careful not to get into that space like, oh, this soil isn't good. It's like, no, it's good soil for someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's great soil for someone. That's when I always have my ears peeled for someone who teaches a proven system. Whenever I hear, here's a proven system, I always go, for who?
Yeah.
It's proven for someone. And
Yeah.
without question, there are some people whose strengths, values, skills, and interests are a fit for that soil.
Right.
But where my hackles start to get raised and I get really kind of defensive on the behalf of all the people who tried it out, weren't a fit, and think it's because there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
That's where I really have to say there's nothing wrong with you. It's the system that wasn't designed with you in mind. Let's go find a container or design a container that actually takes full advantage of who you are. And that's when things really start to just become amazing.
You said, let's go find out.
I did. Let's go find out what's right for you. Anyway.
Well, and so for me, I can say that is a beautiful example of leaving corporate for me. I realized that big systems are not for me. Giants,
later, yeah.
I mean, it's just not. And even though I was a manager with a smaller team, I was part of this giant system where I had no control over the rules that came down the pike, over the policies. And I mean, it's huge. I was part of Johns Hopkins University. I was part of the University of Virginia. I mean, that's a lot. Those are big. They're huge. And I realized it took me nearly a year of being gone from the corporate world, from that world, to be able to say, oh, it was just the soil, right? Because they are the largest employer in the state of Virginia, other than the state.
Wow.
And so that tells you that the soil is right for a good number of people.
Sure. Exactly. And it's not
right for me.
That's right.
And if you plant a succulent in the kind of soil that that is great for, like if you plant it in soil that doesn't have a lot of drainage, then it's going to die. And if you plant, another like a beautiful daisy in soil that has like all the sand, and then it's going to die. So it's not just that we need sunlight and rain. We also need the good soil. I love that analogy. I hope that that's really helpful to those of y'all listening. I hope that it helps you understand why we say, find out who you are.
Got to start there.
Yeah. Find out what's unique about you. I'm putting, Allegra, I'm putting your website up here.
Great. Please do.
And both of us are on social media. In the show notes of the podcast are all the different places you can get in touch with us. And I believe you have is it public, a kind of a platform right now, or are you going to make that public soon?
So the best way, so the community I run right now for coaches it's free to join. It's just this summer, this past month, I've shifted platforms, and there's still a little bit of sawdust on the ground, and I'm just getting a few final things pulled together, but I will be opening those doors more widely, likely at the beginning of September. So if anyone, especially if there are other coaches who are watching, you can go to my website, and at the bottom is a place to just opt in for, I call it the Conversation Project. It's just one of my favorite tools. But you can opt in for that, and it just gets you into my email community. And so I send out updates that way. That's the best way to kind of stay up to date on things.
Excellent.
So going to my website, connecting on Instagram, that's all both really reliable.
And that's pretty much the only, are you on any other platforms? I know
you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. Instagram and LinkedIn are nice because there's a messaging feature to it. So I love hearing from people. So if anyone's watching, like, you can email me. There's a contact page on my website. Like, please send me a note, because, as you know, Andrea too, it's like high relator is like, I want to meet, like,
the
Who are
connection.
you all out there? What's
Important.
happening?
We need the feedback.
Yeah.
And if you haven't actually listened to episode 100, it's a fabulous conversation on Allegra's story and why she's an unconventional leader. And of course, we would love to have you follow this show on YouTube or follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts or any other place that you're listening. Allegra, thank you so much for this conversation. I love talking with you, and I love that you have become my friend over the last 2 years and not just a mentor and a coach. So have a fabulous week, y'all. And just remember that unconventional leaders lead at every level in their strengths and their abilities.
Thanks, Andrew.